Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Biznology Digital Marketing webinar. I'm Frank Reed, and I'm one of the bloggers here at Biznology. Just for a little bit of background, I'm also the managing editor for Marketing Pilgrim blog, which is currently number 10 on the Ad Age Power 150. And I also consult with small and medium business market about effective online marketing through my business Local Basics. Today, however, you'll be hearing from Mike Moran. Mike is the managing editor of the Biznology blog, and he will present how to become a Twitter power user. As we wait for more attendees to join, let me review the format of the webinar. Our Biznology webinars last just about 30 minutes, so you can easily fit them into your busy schedule. We record each webinar, and we'll email you that link later this week. During our speaker's presentation, you can use your GoToWebinar controls to ask a question, and we'd encourage you to do that at any time. Then orange arrow opens and closes your webinar controls. If you have a question, simply type it into the box labeled questions at any time during the event and press the send button. I will select a few questions at the end of the webinar and pose them to Mike. So while we're waiting for a few last attendees to join, I'd like to remind you that the Biznology newsletter and blog are available for free at mikemoran.com. That's MikeMoran.com. So if you're not already a subscriber, we hope that you'll sign up now. Thanks again to all of you for spending 30 minutes with us. We know how valuable your time is, so let's introduce today's speaker. Mike Moran is the managing editor of the Biznology blog, a well-known expert in all things digital marketing, and chief strategist at Conversion, a leading social consultancy. Mike is also the co-author of Search Engine Marketing, Inc., and the sole author of Do It Wrong Quickly. Mike is a veteran of IBM, managing groups in IBM.com for 8 years, and retired from IBM in 2008 as a distinguished engineer. So if you've ever struggled with using Twitter or how to tell if your social media activities are working, this is the webinar for you. So Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Frank. So the place to start is with what your objectives are. So this might not be where most people start you, but this is where I want to start you, because I want you to focus on what it is you're trying to accomplish with Twitter. If the reason that you're on Twitter is that all the cool kids are doing it, then I'd say don't bother, because just wait a few minutes and all the cool kids will be on to something else. What I think you really want to focus on is how do you use Twitter for business. So what are the objectives either personally or for your company for how you want to use Twitter? If you know what you want to accomplish, that will help you figure out what you want to say. So what are the kinds of things you might fill in the blank for this question? So possibly you're interested in getting a marketing message out there, or perhaps you've come under fire for with some criticism out in social media, and you want to use Twitter to improve brand image. Or maybe you're trying to get feedback from your customers on your products and services so that you can make them better. Or maybe you want to reach out to folks to handle the problems that they've had with your company and customer service. Or maybe you've got a completely different goal. It doesn't matter. What does matter is for you to focus on what that goal is so that everything you do is based on returning business value. So everything you do should be focused on improving whatever goal or goals you have for Twitter. Otherwise, you're just doing it because everybody else does, and you'll never be able to know if what you're doing is working. If instead you have a purpose for it, just as you have a purpose for everything else you do in business, that will be the first step to you uncovering what are the things you want to do in Twitter and what are the things you don't. Now, we'll go through a wide range of stuff today. If you've never used Twitter, don't worry. The next couple of slides will tell you how easy it is to get started. But even if you're a veteran Twitter user, what you need to understand is that depending on what your goals are, there are many different ways of using Twitter. There are many different tools that you can use to help you use Twitter better. And those are the things we'll go through today. So at the end of this, I hope that you'll feel like you have a lot better understanding of what you can accomplish with Twitter and what kinds of tools are out there to help you. So let's start out with the real basics of what is Twitter. So I'm sure anybody on this call has heard of Twitter. They know that Twitter is a public social network. So what I mean by a public social network is that the default for everything you do on Twitter is that it's public. Everybody who wants to gets to see it. It gets indexed by search engines. Anything you do in Twitter is something you're doing out in the open, just like with your public website. Now, there are other kinds of social networks. The two most popular are Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are different from Twitter because by default, what happens on Facebook and on LinkedIn are private. So they're only shared with people who are connected to you and people that you have explicitly authorized to be connected to you. So they're your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections. All of those are people that you either asked to connect with you or that asked your permission to connect. Whereas with Twitter, it is possible for you to set your Twitter presence up as something private. You can do what's called locking your tweets, so that you have to approve every person that wants to follow you on Twitter, and only those people can see your tweets. So you can set Twitter up the same way that Facebook and LinkedIn are set up, but most people don't. Most people who are looking for a private community do that on Facebook and LinkedIn, and what they're trying to do in Twitter is to have a public community. And so all the functions are the same, but it's the fact that Twitter by default is public makes a difference in how Twitter is usually used. So how do you get started? So you can go to twitter.com and sign up. And that sign up isn't much different from a sign up for any other type of website. You fill out your profile, and most of what's in your profile is pretty standard stuff. Some of it are things that are going to be shown in public. A few of the things are things that Twitter will tell you they're just keeping so that they have a way of contacting you, for example, your email address. But almost everything else that's on there is something that will be publicly available. And so once you fill out your profile, you're ready to get started. But you might be asking yourself, okay, maybe I'm ready to get started, but I don't know what to do. And this happened to me when I first started using Twitter. In fact, when Twitter first came out, I was absolutely perplexed as to what its usefulness could be. I even have a blog post that you can still search for and find that says, I'm a Twitter twit, because I could not figure out why anybody wanted to know what I was doing. I mean, the question that Twitter posed at the time is, what are you doing now? And my answer was either none of your business or who would care. But after a while, I started to figure out what you can do with Twitter. So there are many things you might want to do with Twitter. What I typically do is I tell people what kinds of places I'm traveling to on business and why. Whether I'm speaking at a conference, I will link to blog posts that I've put up or that other people have put up on the Biznology blog. I'll talk about things that I'm reading. I'll comment on internet marketing and digital marketing news stories. So all those kinds of things are things that I'll do on Twitter, but those weren't things that I understood how to do at the time. And I certainly don't tell every detail of everything I'm doing throughout the day. I don't think my clients would appreciate it or my family. And so you have to decide what your boundaries are. Some people tweet lots of personal stuff. I don't tend to do that so much, but there's nothing wrong with doing it, and it can be a lot of fun. It can add a lot more personality to your tweets. I tend to keep mine to be strictly business. I talk about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it for business reasons, and that tends to be how I use Twitter. But everybody can use it a different way, and you can set your own privacy threshold for how you want to handle Twitter. The first thing you want to do when you start on Twitter is actually, though, not to say anything. I would argue the first thing for you to do is to listen. So the first thing you do is you can start out by searching. So you can search for different words that you're interested in the subjects on. There's also something you can search for called a hashtag. And a hashtag started out on Twitter, but I'm seeing people starting to use it in other kinds of social media as well. All a hashtag is, it uses a hash sign or a pound sign with some single word after it, or multiple words that are all smushed together to look like a single word. So the one we have here is pound debt ceiling, or hash debt ceiling, you can call it. And what happens is, these things are not assigned by any central authority. People just decide that they want to create a tag that they will use when they're talking about a certain subject. And if it starts to catch on, then you'll see many people using that same hashtag, and then it allows you to search for it. So instead of having to know what words people are using when they're talking about the U.S. deciding whether they're going to raise the debt ceiling, you can actually just put in that hashtag. A lot of times you'll see hashtags used at conferences and other events. Well, they'll say if you're tweeting things that the speakers are saying, put in the hashtag for what conference it's about. And then what will happen is people who are not at the conference, who are interested in following what's going on, they can search for that hashtag and they can see a running commentary of the things that are happening. So hashtags are a very interesting way to start listening. But you can also start just by searching for people. And you also want to start following people. So just pick people that you find through those searches or people you know and start following them so that you'll see what their tweets are. There are other ways to listen as well. If the purpose of using Twitter is for you to actually find out how your brand is doing or to improve your brand or your company, whether it's your personal brand or your company's brand, there are lots of different ways to listen. So you might imagine that searching for hashtags or searching for other things is pretty manual. It's pretty sporadic. You wouldn't see things all the time. What you want possibly is some kind of filter that tells you what conversation is going on as it happens. So the kinds of listening that you can do if you're a small company, you don't have a big budget, you don't have a lot of need for a real fancy solution because there aren't that many mentions about you. There aren't that many people talking about you, and maybe not even that many people talking about your industry. You can use free tools. Google Alerts is a good one. Google will show you probably all of the tweets that mention your company, but there are limits to how many it will show. So if you're a larger company, it won't work that well. There are other free tools out there that can do listening as well. If you're a medium size or a larger company, you might want a social listening platform. Now, in the introduction, they told you that I'm Chief Strategist at Conversion. So obviously that's my favorite one, but there are plenty of other ones out there. You can see that there were 3 that were highlighted by the Forrester group in their latest Forrester Wave as being leaders. Conversion's one of them, but Nielsen and Radian6 are there as well. And so those are, and any of these companies that even aren't leaders might be the right one for you, depending on what kinds of needs you have. So, but what these companies do is they will go out there and find all of the information, and honestly, most of them do it not just for Twitter, but they do it for blogs, for message boards, for all sorts of other kinds of social media. And what they'll do is they'll bring back all of the different things that are being said about you. They'll total up different kinds of sentiment, so they'll tell you what things are positive or negative. They'll be able to analyze things in a certain way and aggregate them for you so they can tell them what your trends are, what kind of topics people are talking about in reference to you, or other people in your other competitors in your industry. And so these are kind of enterprise-level solutions for, again, medium-sized or larger companies for which there'll be many, many mentions of your name, but there won't be necessarily something easy that you can do and free that will get you what you're looking for. So depending on what kind of company you are, and obviously if you're just trying to do something personally, it would make sense for you to do the same kinds of things that small companies do, just to find out what's going on, to find out what people are saying about you. Now, one thing you have to ask yourself is if you're listening to enough. So we saw how it could be pretty sporadic for you to just type in hashtags or type in maybe your name or the company product names and try and search Twitter. You probably won't get that much information. You won't do it often enough that you'll see everything. Twitter has an offering called the Fire Hose, in which they will send every blessed tweet, and right now it's up to 200 million every day. And a few listening vendors, like Conversion, have that Fire Hose. Now, if you're a large company, it might be important for you to be working with a vendor that has access to that full Fire Hose. But whether you need it or not sometimes depends on what you're doing with it. So you might be doing something like market research, where all you're trying to do is to get an idea of what people's thoughts are about your products or what kinds of things they're thinking about your industry. And in that case, you might not need the Fire Hose. Sampling might be just fine for you because you have enough mentions of the subject that you're interested in, and you can kind of extrapolate that whatever you got out of the less than full Fire Hose, and a lot of them, they only give you like 10 or 20% of the tweets. But if you have enough mentions, then you can extrapolate that, well, what we found out in the sample is good enough for what everybody's saying. But if you're doing something like crisis management, where people are constantly talking about you and they're talking about different things that are happening because there's some kind of public relations problem that's going on, you probably want the Fire Hose because you want to see every single thing. You don't know which things are going to turn out to be the ones that are important. Same for customer service. It's not really helpful to just sample customer service and answer a few people but not answer most people who are complaining. And sales leads, the same thing. If you're trying to mine Twitter, and a number of our clients do that, to try and find different people or companies who might be interested in purchasing from you, you really want to see all of them so that you don't miss any leads. And so you have to think about what your purpose is for listening before you know what the right way is to do that. Then you want to, as we said before, you want to figure out who you're going to follow. So following people on Twitter, I know it sounds like kind of this stalking thing, and that's what a lot of people who don't like Twitter think of it. But following is because when you follow somebody, unless they've protected their tweets and locked their tweets, they don't have any say as to whether you follow them or not. It's something you can just do all by yourself. And so if you follow people, then they will show up in your Twitter stream. So when you go to Twitter, you'll see what all the people you're following are saying. And that'll happen every time you go there. And so you want to find maybe people you know who are already on Twitter. As we said earlier, you can use search to figure out which people are the people that are talking about the subjects you're interested to follow them. You can also figure out if you want to follow everybody who follows you. That's a decision that you might want to make. I tend not to do that because it makes it harder for me to keep up with the people that I'm really trying to pay attention to. But you might decide to do that. I know people who, anybody who follows them, they follow them back. You might want to find out who's following you. So anytime in Twitter, you can go to your profile and click and see a list of the people following you. You can certainly see the number of them. But each time someone new follows you, you can have an email sent to you, and Twitter will let you know. What it doesn't let you know is when people stop following you, when they unfollow you. There's actually a tool out there called Quitter, Q-W-I-T-T-E-R, and you can go to Quitter and find out which people have stopped following you that were following you before, if you're interested. There are many different ways to tweet. We've been talking so far as if you always go to twitter.com and use the Twitter website. You can do that, but a lot of people tweet from their phone or from some kind of Twitter app, whether the Twitter app is on their phone or whether the Twitter app might be on an iPad or some other kind of mobile device. And if the Twitter app could also be something that you run on your computer. So there are things like TweetDeck and Seismic. Twitter itself is just purchased TweetDeck, and so Twitter is probably going to be integrating TweetDeck into Twitter, so you're likely to see a big change in what the Twitter website looks like. But there are many different kinds of ways of following people and of tweeting yourself, and you can do that whether you're mobile or whether you're sitting in front of your computer. So what are the basics? The basics are things that you have to figure out how to do only 140 characters at a time. So whatever you have to say, you have to somehow fit it in there. And as you type, it'll tell you how many characters are left. And often you're going to want to put links to web pages, blog posts, other kinds of things in your tweet. And to do that, you want to use a link shortener like bit.ly. And actually, Twitter itself is coming out with a link shortener, because what that does, it lets you put in a very long web URL, but then have it shortened to maybe 10 characters or so that it doesn't take up so much of your tweet space. You also want to think about if you want to disclose where you are when you're tweeting. So you can do it all the time by adding your location, or fewer than 1% of people actually do that. Some of the applications that go from your cell phone automatically add your location. So that's something that if you don't want that to happen, you need to be careful about. You also want to interact with others. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can retweet what other people say. So if you see something that you would like to show your followers, you can press that retweet button, or you can put an RT in front of it and just copy and paste it, which is how it started. Or you can reply to that person, where by putting an @ and the person's Twitter handle, you can put an answer in that not only that person sees, but everybody who wants to can see it. All of your followers could see it, and anybody who searches for it can see it. If you want a private reply to that person, you would do something called a direct message, which they can see, but not everybody else does. You also want to share images in your tweets. So you can use something like TwitPic or Plixie. Twitter itself has announced that it's going to add its own picture sharing feature. And you can do these from the Twitter site. You can do it from your email. You can also do it from your phone. So there are lots of ways for you to figure out how you're going to share pictures as part of your tweets. you have a background on Twitter. By default, it looks pretty lame, but you can also customize it. There are free ways of personalizing your background, or you can see there's a few places here where they have some free ones, and you can pay them to design a custom one for Twitbacks, Twitrounds, and TwitterBackgrounds.com. There are lots of other sites that do it too. You also might be interested to find out where you rank in the echelon of Twitter users. So there's a couple I've shown here. TwitterGrader rates me a 98. Clout rates me a 53. So obviously I think TwitterGrader is far more accurate. But truth is, Clout's a lot more popular, and I think Clout's actually the one that's more accurate. And if you're interested to know what kind of progress you're making on Twitter, how many people are listening to you, how many retweets you're getting, and you want to roll that up in one score, this is a way to do that. You can also tweet as a team. So you can share a Twitter ID, and you can use something like Hootsuite or CoTweet. Conversion's tool also lets you do this. And so multiple people can tweet from that same Twitter ID. So this might be something you want to do as your company handle or a brand handle, so that it isn't. So if you want to leverage your tweets, you can figure out how you're going to mirror your tweets from Facebook and from LinkedIn. So it could be that you want to have every tweet show up to your Facebook followers or to your LinkedIn connections, and there's a way to do that. I actually do that. But there's also ways, if you would prefer to use Facebook but have those things show up on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can pick one particular social network and you can mirror things from wherever you are to wherever you want them to go. And so that would be a way of cutting down your work. You can also automatically tweet certain things. Like, for example, you might want to automatically tweet every time you post on your blog. So Twitter Feed and FeedBurner both do that. And so instead of you having to manually do that, then you can figure out how you're going to do it yourself and have these things automatically post those links for you. So you might want to ask yourself, what are you going to do now? What are the things that now you're concerned about? And you might see all these different tools, all these different ideas, and feel a little bit overwhelmed. And I don't want you to feel that way. What I want you to do is to think about where you are. If you're already a person using Twitter and you saw a few of these tools and they made sense to you, try them out. But if you haven't used Twitter at all, you can just sock this away. You can come back and listen to this webinar when you're ready and pick one thing to do. So just get started. Just get started listening. Just get started figuring out what it is that you want to do with Twitter. And then you can each week try something else, or each month try something else, so that you're not feeling like you have to do everything at once. You do not have to do this perfectly. What you really want to do is to just take another step every day. So that kind of sums up where we are. We want to talk a little bit about next month's webinar. If you'll be around at the end of August, I'm going to be doing next month's webinar as well. It's about selling search to the C-suite. So if you're interested, if you work maybe in a medium or larger company, or even a small company where you have to convince the boss how search marketing could work, that's a possibility for you. So Frank, let's open it up for questions.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure our attendees have a much stronger idea of how to use Twitter for social media marketing. But you didn't answer every question, and I've got a few good ones lined up from the audience. I'd like to remind everybody that it's not too late to ask a question. So simply by typing it into the questions box and you go to Webinars Control, you can do that. The first question, I'm not quite sure how you're going to be able to do this, Mike, but someone's asking about a particular example about how you would use TweetDeck or Hootsuite in terms of, I guess, kind of a, maybe a situation as to where it becomes valuable or how it can be used across teams.
Well, some people use it just because they like the Twitter client better, that application better than the Twitter website. But now that Twitter has purchased TweetDeck, you're likely to see that you're going to get a very nice experience on the website. So a lot of people just use it individually that way. But yeah, you can use those things. You can use CoTweet. You can use a lot of the listening tools that we talked about, like Conversions, and you can have a person, for example, who is the normal person who tweets for a particular Twitter handle. So you might have a company Twitter handle, and you might share that between not just the regular person, but other people too, because that person might be out sick one day or go on vacation, or perhaps you just want to share the load. You want to have multiple people who are tweeting from that company Twitter handle, and all of those kinds of things can be reasons why you'd want to use a Twitter application or a listening platform rather than just going to Twitter's website.
Great. We've got a couple of other questions. We have a few minutes, so this will work out really well. What's your opinion like about one of our listeners or one of our attendees has a question about your opinion about outsourcing your Twitter activities?
I know companies that do that. There are companies that outsource their work on Twitter. Some of them work out, some of them don't. I would say that it's maybe more popular for companies to get help from people outside the company to train the people inside the company for how to use Twitter. So there have been situations in which outsourced tweeting has actually resulted in some very embarrassing situations where that agency that you've outsourced to actually is juggling multiple Twitter handles from different companies, and they mix them up. And there was one fairly famous situation where an agency posted something really insulting because the person who was doing it mistakenly thought they were tweeting from their own personal Twitter handle when they were actually tweeting from their client's Twitter handle. And so those things happen sometimes, and although it's kind of alluring for you to think that, well, we don't understand how to do Twitter, let's just bring in a company that does, the truth is that the best results I've seen are when the companies themselves are using Twitter, and I would make that case for all of social media. And so you might want to get help from outside companies to help you understand how to do that thing, how to train your people, how to set policies in place. And these are all things that I do for clients all the time, and Conversion does for clients all the time. So if you're interested in that, please contact me. But that I've seen a lot more success with than just outsourcing Twitter. It's kind of like trying to outsource your personality. You know, if you don't really feel like you have anything to say as a company, giving it to an agency to do, I don't think is going to make it a lot better.
Well, that's great. We have time for one other quick question, which kind of dovetails with what you were just saying about, you know, the idea you really probably should consider this yourself. And the question is, what is the skill set, or what kind of a person is, you know, is it a title, or is it a position, or is it a type of person that should be handling these kind of things for a company? Should be, you know, the Twitter voice.
Yeah, I think that it depends on the company. So if you're a small company, it's perfectly reasonable to just have one person who's doing this. And the kind of person that you want is someone who knows how to operate in public. They might be the same kind of person that you would have on the phone to clients, or that you would be having answer customer questions, or it might be a salesperson. It's someone who knows how to interact with your clients and with the public. And so that would be the right thing to do. In a larger company, you probably want to have many people doing it. And not only people that would traditionally interact with the public, but people who are experts. And what you want to do is to train them to be able to operate in public. So just as you wouldn't take some research scientist and just send them to the podium at a big conference without having any training, without having any understanding of what the company messaging is in certain areas, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that on Twitter either. You wouldn't just take people who are experts and say, okay, open a Twitter account and just start saying things. What you would do instead is you would have your public relations team, for example, work with those experts so that they understand what the kinds of company objectives are for using Twitter or using any social media for that matter. And then what you want to do is to help those people and mentor them so that they know what kinds of things from their expertise will really advance the company's message. So how can the people working on your new products communicate without divulging trade secrets? How can your salespeople talk about different innovative ways that your clients are using things? How can the product managers talk about different ways of using the product that people might not have thought of, or different ways to discuss problems that are being solved by the product that maybe they wouldn't see if they just went to your product catalog page? And so those are the kinds of things that make interesting blog posts. They make interesting responses to questions on message boards. And if you can make them short enough, they become very interesting tweets as well. And so what you want to do is to have people build up the expertise in public that your company has in solving certain problems. And so you can use Twitter for that just as you use any other kind of social media or digital presence. And so the kinds of people who you want doing that are the people who have that information, who are the experts, who know. They could be experts in clients, they could be experts in products, they could be experts in technology. Depends on your company what kinds of expertise is interesting to your clients and to the public. And so all of those kinds of people are the right people, but they need a lot of training, they need a lot of help because many of them are not used to operating in public.
Well, great, Mike. I really appreciate it. And one of the things we try to do here with our BizNknowledge webinars is be respectful of your time. So looks like we're just a few minutes over, and we're going to wrap up for today. But we thank Mike, obviously, for all the great ideas, and thanks especially to you guys who have come here and for your participation and your questions. We really do appreciate it, and that's kind of what makes this work well. If any of you have any questions that you didn't have the time to answer, or something that kind of popped up, or you didn't want to answer, didn't want to ask it here, you can email your question to the following email address to Eileen. It's EILEEN at MikeMoranGroup.com, and she'll be sure to get them any of those questions to Mike for an answer. Later on this week, we'll send you all a link to the recording of the webinar to listen to again and to share with others. And finally, we also invite you to mark your calendars for the next BizNknowledge webinar, which will be Selling Search to the C-Suite, which is always a fun event. And it's scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern Time on August 30th. So thank you very much, everybody, and we hope you have a